Good morning and welcome to Talking Point here on WESN, the content capital. My name is Keaton Shaw. We've started off the week as we've ended it. It is damp, it is raining outside. Over the weekend, we were fortunate enough to have a bit of a reprieve, but this morning, if you're making your way to work, as always, please be mindful of the wet roads and always drive for the others on the road as well. Be absolutely safe, and if you're walking, walk with your umbrellas. But as we welcome you to the program and a new week, as always, there is a lot to uncover, a lot to discuss, and we can't always do that in one show. So this morning, we've just picked a couple of things that we like to touch on, and as we get into those stories, let me introduce my co-host and colleague, Mr. Sean Michael Small. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning, Keaton. Yes, today is a wet day to have a wet day. It was a wonderful day for sleeping. That is literally the first thing I thought of when I realized that the rain was loud enough to kind of arouse me from my not long enough slumber, which is considerable. And I mean, I think you potentially would have had some difficulties coming into Port of Spain. I noticed traffic this morning was a lot lighter than I expected. I can't remember the last time I was able to get to the studio within around 10 minutes, so I was just a little bit early. It was offset by some technical difficulties with my car, so that's a whole other story. But I don't know if perhaps the dark clouds that we see this morning might be just a good analogy for the state that the country is in. And to me, in my mind, and I've made this comment a long time ago, and it's pertinent again, it's almost as though we have a race to the bottom, and I'm basically hoping that someone decides to just reverse course enough so that they're not as bad as they're making themselves out to be with regards to our political leadership. And it goes without saying that, yes, what comes from the top trickles down from below, and you do have to now wonder really and truly just how much is it that our leaders, and this is not just political leaders, that is to say government, you know, we could also include unions and some business leaders and some community leaders and some community leaders, just how much of that trickles down now and affects the base level of our society. And that's why we have a lot of issues across the board, and it seems as though our bullet point solutions or shotgun solutions are not really hitting the mark because it's too widespread and it's too systemic in everything.
Well, I don't think I've heard very many solutions to the issues at hand, but at least this is where I say we'll give some updates. So let's start off. On February 25th, it was reported that 4 divers from Pario went missing after undersea incident. Thus far, it's been stated that the Commission of Inquiry is to begin. This was the update that was given by lead counsel to the Commission of Inquiry. Well, they're hoping to begin at around August, somewhere within August, where Ramesh Lawrence Maraj, lead counsel, said a procedural hearing will be held, and soon members of the public will be allowed the opportunity to send written statements and documents for consideration by the Commission. They're also looking for the Secretariat to be established at the Southern Academy of the Performing Arts, and procedural rules to govern the Commission have been drafted and are being considered by the Commission. Now, this is a fair update. My concern is that we have to wait another 2 months before it begins. Fair from the perspective that, okay, we've gotten more information and this is the status where we are. Unfortunate from the fact that we're going to have to keep reminding the public over the next couple of weeks into the next 2 months that the Commission of Inquiry has not started as yet and the family remains in mourning.
Right. So the incident happened in February?
February 25th.
Right. Now we're in June. So we're talking 3 to 4 months after, we're getting news that it's going to start 2 months after. Now, on one hand, I guess you could say the people who did not necessarily push for the Commission of Inquiry might be able to say, I told you so, because if the government went ahead with their plans, we would hope, and that's not necessarily like an ironclad hope, right? There's no guarantees that it would have happened within 2 months. But we were thinking of a few weeks to a couple months if the government just went ahead with its investigation, with its panel, and I think we were looking at that time frame as potentially being too long. Why? Because the family needs answers. So we have a commission of inquiry. Now we're looking at essentially 6 months later before it even starts. So to actually get it, the final results we're looking at from the moment of the accident, maybe 8 to 10 months, depending on how long this whole process takes. And the longer it takes to start, probably the more difficult it would be to get the resolution because the case is not fresh. Meanwhile, I do have to ask though, to be fair to those that wanted the commission of inquiry, why is it taking so long to commence this thing? Really and truly, do we have to bring in special machinery? What is the technical hold-up, the practical hold-up? Because if it is just a case, yes, it's a different set of people, but ultimately speaking, the processes should be similar enough that the time frame shouldn't be that dissimilar.
Well, also adding to that, the opportunity for the defense, and bear in mind the defense will now be Paria Fuel Trading Company Limited, as well as the state. And they have the opportunity to now bolster or strengthen their defense and their arguments before the Commission of Inquiry. But to add to this from another angle, an audit into the Occupational Safety and Health Authority, OSHA, has indicated that over the last 15 months, 14 officers, inclusive of the chief inspector, 14 OSHA officers have actually resigned. Now, it's being stated as due to being hushed up by the government officials, and that is according to, I'll get you the exact name just now, the Health and Safety Workers Union, the union which it falls under, which is the Insurance General Workers Trade Union. This is being stated by the Labour Relations Officer, Wesley Francis. Now, interestingly enough, the Chief Inspector over this particular matter, the Paria matter, has also resigned. And the defense attorney for the families, that is Prakash Ramda, has indicated his concern over the fact that now he's unsure whether or not the individual will be willing to speak before the Commission of Inquiry for fear of victimization. Now, I'm also wondering if the powers of the remit of the Commission of Inquiry will allow them to call on individuals who acted in those positions when the matter took place, rather than individuals who are currently overseeing the issue.
This is why I take a big issue with how Minister Cummings has handled his matter, because it's literally trampling over transparency, and while it's not necessarily the same scenario, you're setting a precedent with regards to whistleblower protection. So now that we see that, I can't fault this gentleman for potentially thinking, I don't want to talk, because somebody might decide to persecute me based on what I have to say. And we're not talking about some minor harassment at work. In this country, we do have to realize that unfortunately things could escalate in ways beyond pleasant civil discourse. So here's the thing. One of the interesting examples we have is Caribbean Airlines / BWIA, right? The safety record of the national / regional carrier, for the most part, is one of the best in the world. Why? Because we know we can't afford to have a poor safety record. And I do think now that what is it about our oil industry and our energy sector that is allowing someone to think, yeah, it's fine if we kind of skate some procedures and yes, I know it's not exactly the same thing, but we're a small country. 1 or 2 accidents are going to have a big impact with regards to our ability just to function. Because, and you could argue, well, right, 4 men lost their lives. To some extent, we're lucky that it wasn't the type of accident where not only would more people lose their lives, but it would affect the economic livelihood of the entity involved, of the state, with regards to collecting tax revenue off of energy trade. So we're lucky that the disaster was limited. It could be a lot worse. And if this is systemic to OSHA, there's no guarantee that the next one won't be on a larger scale.
Now, first of all,
there's also the communities around Point Lisa's industrial estate and a lot of the neighborhoods around the area that's also at risk.
Well, first of all, I don't think any airline could afford to have a poor safety record, as you alluded to. But overall, I believe with 14 resignations, you could have 14 different reasons. And having the union leaders speak about it and saying that one of the reasons is wage negotiations, it's difficult to digest. I'm not saying that that is not the issue or not an issue. I'm just saying with 14 individuals, there could be 14 reasons why. So I'm not going to necessarily jump to any conclusions and say, this is political victimization, this is pressure faced from their superiors, or pressure faced from the above. However, my entire argument is solely based off of this. Whilst OSHA it falls under the arm of government and under the OSHA Act, simple, it is still supposed to be an authority that is autonomous to government. It shouldn't have any government interference and should remain independent of any sort of directives given from government.
I think we do a poor job. Like, it's there in the law, XYZ body is supposed to be independent. We have a poor job of making something to ensure those structures actually are independent. And this goes back to being bipartisan as opposed to, well, government runs everything and the opposition is just there to complain. Well, no, in the states at the very least, on committees that have power, because a lot of the joint select committees that I see on the parliamentarian broadcast, I do have to wonder, well, what authority do you really have to do anything? Because I don't really hear these committees actually do anything. Government still does things, and opposition still is left to complain because they can't do anything. So what is the point of having these committees? Back to OSHA. If it's a problem with wage negotiation, I'll just like to point out one thing, right? And yes, there's no evidence, but based on how the negotiations went, I do believe that unions over COVID use the vaccination policy and the reopening of schools policy to try to negotiate for better wages. That's my belief. That's my belief, based on how the situation played out. And I cannot necessarily trust that if you have a wage dispute, that the work is going to be done perfectly. Even if the officers are trying their best, it's not going to help them, no matter how good they are, that they are constantly now in a dispute with their employer over wages. We don't know what the dispute is. It's just a bad sign. And the law of averages state, not all of them are going to be, given 100%, 110%, because it's that kind of job. You want everything, the best that you could do, more than 100% if necessary, because it's the safety and health of people that you're talking about. But when you have wage disputes, can we really expect everybody to be in lockstep and to keep moving forward? They could all start off that way, but eventually it's hard to keep up that pace when your employer is kind of taking you for granted.
Well, we only have about 1 minute left, so to just quickly update you on some other issues that we have focused on heavily on Talking Point before. The Minister of Public Utilities, Marvin Gonzalez, said the government will announce its plans for the restructuring of the Water and Sewage Authority by the end of this month. So last week when I mentioned, I don't think that they even have a plan. I guess that they've now stated that they need this to take place, they need this restructuring to happen. It's going forward. We've remained silent at it for so many months now, but with all the hullabaloo that's taking place with other public utilities and other state entities, let's bring forward this plan.
I think it might be a little bit different than that. I think that the Ministry of Public Utilities might have multiple plans. The question is, has the government figured out which plan? And is the government really in lockstep as to a plan and ready to implement a plan? And could there be a plan that is not going to involve some sort of turmoil with labor negotiation? Really and truly. And ultimately that always was the roadblock or the hurdle for me, that I don't know if we would ever get that point, and it's just one of those things where
or
we have to
maybe
bite
there
the
is multiple plans, and we're just awaiting the Minister of Finance's approval for which one
I mean,
he wants.
The flip side is we already have one minister appointed at the Minister of Public Utilities and vice versa with regards to the state of roads.
I think that's the most brilliant thing, by the way. I think that's a rather brilliant thing, that what we're seeing between the Minister of Works and Transport, Ransonen, and the Minister of Public Utilities. Ransonen is saying, well, no, my ministry is not responsible for the state of roads, it's actually WASA. And the Minister of Public Utilities is saying, well, I don't think we should necessarily blame WASA for the issue.
And I think the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. But again, it comes back to, well, if you have, and I would say these are two important ministers. Maybe I'm wrong with regards to how it's viewed internally in EPNM. But publicly speaking, two important ministers have a public spot like this. How confident are we supposed to be that Cabinet is going to come to the correct consensus and pick the right course of action? I don't know. Because this is a complicated situation.
Which is why the best thing is for it to be laid. We get all the details and not just trimmings of the details that they want us to know of. We get all the details. I hope they make the entire report public so that the public can read it themselves, analyze it themselves, and we can have discussions on it.
When was the last report that was made entirely public?
Was the TNTech report made public? No, it wasn't. No. We only got part of it.
I don't think there's any.
We only got part of it. But finally, I think actually the last report that I recall being made public was in relation to the death at hospitals associated with COVID-19.
Okay.
That report was made public.
Ironically, a report that half the population does not believe.
Well,
that's me being facetious. It's not that I know for sure it's half, but generally speaking.
At least it was made public.
At least it was made public.
At least we could name one.
Yeah.
And very finally, very quickly, police have confirmed that Minister Foster Cummings is still under investigation. They cannot give a specific timeline as to when they see this ending. It's been indicated that investigations such as these, Acting Senior Superintendent assigned to the Anti-Corruption Investigative Bureau, Derek Walker, said it could take from 1 day to up to 10 years for just such an investigation to take place. Just to give you very briefly a breakdown of what we know thus far, it first came to light from Senator Jayanti Lakshmi last month. And last year, police sought the court's permission for production orders to be used to obtain information from several financial entities as they probe payments to companies formerly linked to Minister Foster Cummings. His attorneys objected to the police application before the court. However, the judge suspended the hearings, but in October last year ruled against the objection of Cummings' lawyers. Also in a media briefing, Inspector Brian Daniel of the Anti-Corruption Investigative Bureau said in 2020, one politician was charged for the offense of corruptly agreeing to accept money. However, he did not name the politician.
I would just like to point out that you could probably ask just about every NGO that deals with crime what is one of the main causes of crime in this country. And they would look to the youth and issues with regards to their education, challenges with their upbringing because of the lack of opportunities they have or the bad influences that they're exposed to. And then we have the Minister of Youth Development. Am I correct? The Minister of Youth Development is under suspicion and is currently being investigated. And if we want
alleged white-collar crime,
right? Well, right. So if we want to deal with crime, and you know, the future of our nation is in the backpack of our kids and all of that wonderful buzzword talk, at the end of the day, how could we just, you know, the only thing worse would be if it was the Minister of National Security under investigation with regards to our crime situation. That's the only thing that would be worse.
With regards to our crime situation. Anyway, folks, we take a break now here on the program, and when we return, we get into the meat of our conversations this morning. Stay tuned. You're watching Talking Point on WESN, your content capital.
Burning questions, urgent topics. Welcome back to One on One, the show where we tackle the most current and pertinent subjects that are affecting all citizens, where we ask the hard questions and have in-depth conversations. What separates One on One from other talk shows is that the conversation stems from a younger perspective on topics that affect the fabric of our society. One on One, Wednesdays at 10 a.m. on WESN Content Capital.
Did you know that 1 in 4 children has an undetected eye problem? Their vision can change dramatically every year, from the blackboard to digital screens. 80% of learning starts with what our eyes perceive. Keep your child's future in focus at Ferreira Optical. Get complete eyewear for kids starting at only $695. Come into Ferreira Optical today. Conditions apply.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Sight, Thursdays at 11 a.m. only on WESN, Content Capital.
Let your voice be heard. Call Madam Fix-It on WESN, the only place that effectively helps you with your woes. Having problems getting onto government agencies, water woes, NIS and pension problems, potholes, and much, much more. Call me, Madam Fix-It, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right here on WESN. Let me fix it for you.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing now, Andy.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Paul?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Welcome back to Talking Points, and with us today we have someone to speak to with regards to a very critical matter, I would say. I mean, it depends on your perspective. Now, on Talking Point, we have taken to task politicians from both sides with regards to various ongoing observations that we have made. And with regards to the opposition and the opposition leader, she very recently committed what I would describe, in my opinion, to be an unforced error with regards to how she decided to respond to a member of government. Now, I am not necessarily going to say that the member of government is entirely blameless in the situation. However, the response, which I did not necessarily react to very, very positively, leaves a lot of questions with regards to how we're going to perceive our politicians moving forward. Now, with us is the Public Relations Officer of the United National Congress, Dr. Kirk Mayhew, who is here to perhaps give us an alternative perspective with regards to the comments that the opposition leader made. So to be fair, it's easy to respond with the initial outrage, and perhaps we could get a different point of view. Good morning, Dr. Mayhew.
Good morning, and both to you and your viewers.
Good morning, Dr. Mayhew. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if you are muted or if we are having some technical difficulties here.
Yeah, I think that's you. I'm not muted.
Okay, I'm not sure if it's your microphone. Okay, so our directors are actually hearing you in the master.
My microphone level is showing.
I'm not entirely sure what's taking place there. All right. It actually may be on our end, Dr. Mayhew. So what we're going to have to do, unfortunately, is we're just going to have to quickly take for a break. Hopefully we can sort out the issue, and when we return, we can get into the conversation. So stay with us, Dr. Mayhew. Stay with us, folks. We'll be right back after this.
Burning questions, urgent topics. Welcome back to One on One, the show where we tackle the most current and pertinent subjects that are affecting all citizens, where we ask the hard questions and have in-depth conversations. What separates One on One from other talk shows is that the conversation stems from a younger perspective on topics that affect the fabric of our society. One on One, Wednesdays at 10 a.m. on WESN Content Capital.
It may seem like the hardest thing to do right now, but we all need each other to wear a mask, wash our hands, watch our physical distance, and stay at home. We need you safe. Together we can make the difference. Together we can curb the spread of COVID-19. So let's be responsible in our actions. The Trinidad and Tobago Red Cross Society. Mission-based, people-focused, community-driven.
Welcome back to Talking Point. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen, but we do have, with audio, so we can hear him, the PR of the UNC, Dr. Kirk Mayhew. Dr. Mayhew, good morning, sir. Welcome to Talking Points.
Good morning to both of you and to all your viewers.
Good morning, Dr. Mayhew. Thank you for joining us. Just before we get into the interview, let's take a quick look at this clip.
Vexed about my name for. This lady went on a platform last week and 3 or 4 times, Kamla Sushila Prasad Bisesa. Isn't that a beautiful name? Yeah. What problem you have with my name? What's wrong with my name? Yeah, Camille. At least I have a name for my ancestors. Where you got yours from? Your name is that of a slave master. So be real, understand. We respect you, we respect ourselves, and
Well, that was the opposition leader, Kamla Sushila Prasad Bisesa. And Dr. Kirk Mayhew has indicated before this interview that how the statement was not racist, but the opposition leader expressing her love for her heritage, as everyone should, indicating that it is the bitter truth. Now, Dr. Mayhew, you have given your explanation, but could you elaborate a bit further on what is the bitter truth and exactly how is this without any racial undertones?
Yeah, sure. Well, again, what you should have done is played the Camille Robinson Regis clips, the several clips in the PNM meeting of her mocking the name Kamla Sushila Prasad. It was more than 3 or 4 times. The audience laughing. I don't think you heard a single bit of snickering, laughter, or any derision there. But in the PNM meeting, people bawling, laughing every time they say Sushila. Then Laura Lizama comes on after, laughing, saying we should say her full name every time, and then playing on the name, making fun of it, saying "Shoo Kamla" and etc. Right? I mean, it was a mocking that many Indian people with Hindu Indian names, but not only Indian persons, Chinese persons with Chinese names, African persons with African sounding names have been made fun of and constantly ceaselessly, and nobody said anything. Nobody condemns. That's fine. And what the leader was pointing out to, well, and again, and what it was, why did Camille Robinson Regis do this? And that's a very important point. It's because the PNM's backs have been against the wall. They've been cornered. They had nothing to say. The police We're confirming that Foster Cummings is still under investigation. The pedophilia ring, the abusers still left in the home, the cover-up of the Judith Jones report, their backs were against the wall. And the typical PNM response to try to escape, to try to squirm out, is to bring up something about race. A false thing about race, a racial ridicule, and that is the playbook. And so they got everybody to laugh at her name over and over and over again.
Well,
so when the opposition leader on Thursday was rightly disgusted by that, when she pointed it out, what she was doing, because you cut off her explanation just now, obviously, which always happens because you were being selective. But what she went on to say after was that we should all be proud of our names. We should all be proud of our heritage, from whatever heritage we come from. And that in fact, what she was doing was showing the irony. Because it is such an irony, it's a sad irony, that people whose names were stolen from them, whose language, culture, religions, God were stolen from them, used these names that were given to them under extremely unfortunate circumstances to actually have a skewed sense of superiority. So this is such and they actually feel they are entitled to laugh at names that they think are funny sounding, are non-Christian, or non-white. And what the assumption is behind all of that is that white, Christian, European civilization is superior, and African, Indian, and non-Western civilizations are backward, their religions are heathen and pagan, they are not modern, etc., and worthy of being ridiculed because the superior culture of white Christian European civilization is there.
Well, Dr.
And these
Mayo,
colonial attitudes need to be ended.
Well, Dr. Mayo, I mean, I understand what you're saying. And as I mentioned in the introduction, before we had to take the break for the technical difficulties, I did say that I don't necessarily agree with the genesis that caused the opposition leader to respond, right? I'm not necessarily, I get it, and I do believe that, yes, that sort of thing should also be condemned, mainly because there's just no value whatsoever with regards to that sort of statement. There is no content there worth anything discussing. It was a cheap joke to try to, well, I would not necessarily, or I can't necessarily disagree with you. It's a cheap joke because they don't have much else to say in the moment. However,
it's not even a joke. There's nothing funny about it.
Right. However,
some people think, oh, the name sounds funny.
Yeah, right. But however, at the end of the day, we do have to now ask, just because we had one bad attack in one direction, should we necessarily accept the reverse? Now, I get that you said that she went on to explain. However, at the end of the day, what's going to strike a chord with people? Because as much as we try to disseminate information as best as possible, the bell has been rung. We can't unring the bell. And since Thursday, it has probably made the rounds. And that's what's going to hit people. And this has now comes to a point where I do just have to ask, wouldn't it have been better to approach the situation in a much more constructive way? Point out the flaws, the errors, the ineptitude, the bad phrases by the other side, but don't necessarily fall for the trap of responding in kind, because now we were at a point where the government has a lot of things to answer for. We have a lot of questions on a lot of issues, but now this issue, and this is not the first time, because I do have an issue with how the Police Service Commission was handled. I found that it was very unfortunate that it went from debating the collapse of the Service Commission and the appointment of the Commissioner of Police, and then eventually that petered off into the opposition leader versus the independent senators, which I understand is important, but it took away from what I would say a bigger issue. Now we have, in my mind, a similar situation where the government has a lot to answer for, and the PNM did not necessarily, push Kamala to make those statements. So the opposition leader's statements is distracting us to some extent. She could have decided to say something else.
I would disagree that she was not pushed. I mean, you didn't show the clip, so the viewers can't see it. But if for those that did see the meeting, I mean, it was a constant ridicule. I mean, I remember when I was watching it, and I was, what are they doing? Is this thing coming back? Because you have to remember 2 weeks, I think it was just 2 weeks before, and this was just before Indian Arrival Day, and then like 2 weeks before or so, very recently before, The Guardian publishes an article by Winfred James, whose sole purpose, the entire article from beginning to end, was mocking Indian names, about how funny they sounded and about how and just laughing at Indian names. It was incredible that the major newspaper, the oldest newspaper, the most venerable newspaper in our society, just published that without thinking twice. And I mean, that caused a lot of outrage. And then after all of that, then Camille Robinson Regis came there. And then at the same meeting, I'm not going to repeat it now, at the same PNM meeting, Dr. Rowley went on another racial thing. I know they have that in their back pocket, and they're going to pull out that race card when their backs are against the wall again. And he outlined the whole thing, and he said he's ready to fight for it, right? They were pushing a racial narrative in that meeting, and they've prepared the ground, and they have it in their back pockets, because this is what they always do. I do totally agree with you that this is a huge distraction, and one wishes it wasn't, right? Now, but you see, one of the things is, for instance, the reaction that people have to this bitter truth, this sad truth about the history of the region in slavery, in the robbing of people's identities and language and religion and culture and God, etc. She did not make this up. She is directly taking this from the teachings of Elijah Muhammad, of Malcolm X, So when Cassius Clay changed his name to Muhammad Ali, or Malcolm Little to Malcolm X, or Elijah Poole, or in our own country, Geddes Granger to Makandal Daga, from Dave Darbo to Kafra Kambon. So you have, they are the ones who taught us, who taught me about that whole history, and that these names, Malcolm X, you would talk about, if you saw a Chinese person with the name Patrick Murphy, you'd think he's insane.
Well,
that name does not matter. And when they started this campaign, let's say their own people mocked them and rejected them. NJAC members can tell you many stories, because as you know, NJAC are allied with the United National Congress.
I appreciate you trying to give us a history of Trinidad and Tobago and Trinidad and Tobago's politics, but
because that's what this is about.
Well, you indicated that we're being selective, but I cannot help but hear only selective things on your part. Now, I completely understand that you're the public relations officer of the United National Congress and you have a job to do, but you're also an academic. And I think that you're taking me as well as others for a fool, because whether or not you believe that it is a racial comment, there is perceived racism, which is just as bad.
Okay,
and hold on, sir.
Okay,
hold on.
What is the racism? I want you to explain your statement. What is the racism?
Hold on, sir. Because you said it's the bitter truth. I'm saying it's perceived racism because we're basing it off of the response of the public, and as journalists,
but what is the racism? Explain it. Let's deconstruct it.
Okay, let me finish with my question first, and then I'll give you the opportunity to respond. I have heard no apology or no condemnation on your part. And even if you choose not to apologize to Ms. Camille Robinson Regis, Many members of the public are outraged. So to come and say it's the bitter truth and defend the comments of the opposition leader whilst chastising Camille Robinson Regis for doing essentially what the opposition leader did, is it that the United National Congress condones this sort of behavior only for its members whilst condemning others for the wrongdoing?
What behavior are you talking about?
Making such comments on a platform, especially
what comment?
Let me interject.
What comment?
So currently, whether we like it or not, because I don't necessarily completely agree with it, but just take, for instance, the statement, All Lives Matter. At the height of the BLM movement in America, that statement was significantly charged way out of proportion for its literal meaning, and more than one person stumbled into accusations of racism because they were not aware of the ongoing debate with regards to the phrase Black Lives Matter versus the responses by those that either wanted to disagree with Black Lives Matter or honestly were trying to be more inclusive. So All Lives Matter was a double-edged sword. It had a lot of baggage applied to it. So I think what my co-host is trying to say is, yes, it's not necessarily that the opposition leader was trying to be racist, but at the end of the day, her intent, unfortunately, with regards to public perception, is not necessarily going to matter. And it's not even up to us. We're basically just observing and pointing out the observation that two parts of the general public, two voters who the UNC is probably hoping to capture in the upcoming elections, that perception is going to be their reality.
Yeah. And as I said, I mean, and this is a long process of decolonization. This is not just an event about what happened Thursday. This is part of the, as I said, the long process of mental decolonization. And that, and NJAC people will tell you, when they went campaigning, let's say in the 1981 elections here, they will give you the stories of how, when they went around, the PNM campaign against NJAC was to say, oh gosh, they're going to make you wear dashikis and make everybody have African names. Right? There is this innate resistance in our minds that we see history as offensive, right? And we have to decolonize ourselves from this. This is something that we must struggle with as a society still. We are independent from 1962, yes, but the mental chains of colonialism and slavery are on us. And to point out the historical truth and to point out the irony that there are people whose names have been stolen from them, and then the names that were given to them by their slave masters have been used as a false sense of having superiority because they have the names of white, Christian, European civilization, and therefore they can laugh at African names, and they can laugh at Indian names, and they can laugh at other names because they are funny and from backward pagan heathen peoples, right? And so people take so when you dig into our own history, people are uncomfortable. They are still uncomfortable. This is one of the reasons why our proper history is not taught in school. This is actually a teachable moment, a learning moment in the process of decolonization.
Well, as much as I appreciate that academic perspective and the reality that it impacts our society currently, I do have to point this out. I have at times before criticized the Prime Minister for what I would say he fell for the bait. Mud was slung at him and he threw mud back. So to be fair, I have to now look at the opposition leader and say, well, hold on, mud was flung at you, I get it, I understand that. We should condemn it. Well, I'm just saying, why fling mud back?
And to add to what my colleague is saying, it's very difficult to understand that you're an academic, you're giving us this history, we appreciate it, but at the same time, for you to try and justify what the opposition leader was stating while condemning Ms. Camille Robinson Regis, I mean, isn't that a contradiction in itself, sir?
No, and I need to point out the contradiction in your thinking.
Please do.
What was mud about pointing out that bit of history and tragedy? Because that tragedy has been used to express a sense of superiority. So what was the mud in that? I'd like to genuinely know from you all.
In part,
what is the mud? Right? She wasn't laughing. Nobody in the audience was laughing.
But the
I was
opposition
there.
laughed.
In part, Dr. Mayhew, her tone of delivery did not suggest that she was delivering the line from an academic perspective, from a I do not want to say this is a harsh reality, why are we doing this because of this? It was a mocking tone at the end of the day, not necessarily a joking tone, and she didn't necessarily, overdo it like perhaps the PNM did with regards to taking it, on and on and on. But the tone did not help the situation, and it felt as though at the end of the day, she was responding to a personal attack with a little bit of a dig on her
I can
side.
understand that. I can understand that interpretation, and I mean, and certainly, as a human being, where it was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back of having the name made fun of, and there was anger at the situation of ancestral names being made fun of and so forth. There was obviously human emotion there, obviously there. But, and as I said, if you had played the whole sentence where, what she was saying was that, yes, that we come from the greatest civilizations on earth, all of us in Africa, in India, in China, in the Middle East, and we are all here, and we should all be proud of our ancestry. That's right, exactly where you cut off in the clip, right, where she was saying that. That's what it was about. That's what the whole context was. And if there was some anger in the tone at a certain point, that's the human side of, I suppose, being mocked. But in no way was it meant as any sort of insult, but saying, check yourself what you're doing. Right? That's what it was. That's what it was.
Well, Dr. Mayhew, unfortunately, that's all the time we have. I mean, I wish we had more time, because there's a lot more that I'd like to get into. I know today is the nomination day for the United National Congress, but hopefully, sir, you're willing to come on the program again in the future to have further discussions as it relates to the state
obviously
of the United National Congress. But thank you very much, sir, for your time.
Thank you for appearing and dealing with this obviously complicated issue.
Yeah, and I appreciate the discussion.
Thank you, sir. Well, folks, here on Talking Point, the TTPS has reached out to us, and we're very happy, we're very pleased to welcome them to the program. So in a moment, as we take a break, we will be welcoming to Talking Point a TTPS media ambassador. Talking Point welcomes the TTPS, and we'll get into that very shortly. Stay tuned.
Gift giving during a lockdown can still be hassle-free with a gift from FanZone, with delivery options available nationwide. Visit and browse our Facebook and Instagram pages for all your official licensed merchandise and apparel, and have it delivered to your door. Find us on Facebook and Instagram. FanZone, we've got you covered.
The best for your baby is at dbesttoys.com. We have the best strollers, car seats, walkers, feeding accessories, playpens, cribs, clothing, and the widest range of brand name toys like Barbie, Hot Wheels, Nerf, LOL, Fisher-Price, Cocomelon, Intex Pools, Amazon Fire tablets, HP and Gateway laptops, and the best bikes, scooters, skateboards, and ride-on. Visit us in-store at Southern Main Road, McBean, or shop online now at dbesttoys.com. That's dbesttoys.com. We have the best toys at the best prices.
There's a taste in the air everywhere. Feel the vibe, cause it's something to share. Smooth, rich and creamy, you'll find it right here. Makes you smile, relax a while, it's fun and good cheer. Ooh, enjoy every scoop. Ooh, every taste will get you hooked. We have flavors that you love, come combination special. Come along, enjoy your treats. This is Uncle Pete's.
In these COVID times, things are a little different. You may have some skepticism when it comes to going to the hospital or going into the doctor because of crowds or because of so many people being present. We are now in the world of telemedicine.
Telemedicine is the innovation of using technology to treat patients at a distance.
Zakia is here today. She's going to show us a little bit of what she does as part of her at-home exercise routine. What's up, Doc? Tuesdays and Thursdays here on WESN, Content Capital.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
Welcome back to Talking Point. And of course, my co-host, when we went on the break, gave us the preview of what's to come. And that is to say, we have with us a media ambassador from the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. So we would like to applaud the TTPS for, again, their efforts to be transparent and to be with us. Welcome, Acting Superintendent Ali. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, and thanks for being here. Thanks for allow me to be on your show. It's a very interesting time for the TTPS that we have media ambassadors at all the different, at most of the radio stations and the radio networks. Our objective is to ensure that we can share legitimate information to the public and just be there to answer questions and continue partnering with the public.
Yes. Well, ASP Ali, thank you for joining us here on Talking Point. Many of the times we have questions that we can't get answers to, and I'm glad that you said to give factual information shared with the public as well as with us. I promise you I wouldn't go too hard and heavy on you as I have to with other guests. But welcome to the program. And this campaign on the part of the TTPS, because as you mentioned, they have media ambassadors on various radio stations and television stations. Often, the public are very quick to jump to assumptions, make accusations without necessarily having any sort of information on hand. It's with just very little that they've witnessed or been fed. So now, how important is it, especially as you said, it's an interesting time for the TTPS, how important is it for the TTPS to now bridge that information gap between the public and the TTPS in order to ensure effective policing and good citizenry?
And it's interesting that you put it that way, because the introduction of social media has put a tailspin on a lot of law enforcement throughout the world. Before something happens, before we can get a statement out, social media takes it and run. And you know that we have social media fanatics. No matter what you say afterwards, social media is the truth and the whole truth and nothing but the truth. So it's our way of contradicting, or I should say, I wouldn't say contradicting, but our countermeasures in putting together the truth, the facts surrounding the incidents, and leave it up to the public now to determine what is the facts and what is not the facts. Not everything we can share with the media, but at the same time, we can share as much as possible to ensure that we have transparency in the TTPS the media will see that, and the general public see that we are working towards alleviating the problem that we have with crime and bridging that gap, that we are not isolated from the media and continue sharing. And that is the important aspect of this Media Ambassador initiative. It was, in fact, it started in our former commissioner, Mr. Gary Griffith. It was there when Mr. Stephen Williams was around, but it was not as active as it was. So I want to say that yes, the former commissioner has enhanced it, and now the present commissioner see the need to continue this initiative, and it's an important initiative because the rhetoric from the police service must be said out there, and we must be able to share the correct information. And media ambassadors have been doing a tremendous job thus far. As you know, that we have media ambassadors on CNC3, we have media ambassadors on TV6, TTT, both in Trinidad and Tobago, and a lot of the radio stations, you will hear our media ambassadors. Right, so as much information that we can share with you all, right, it's important.
Well, one thing for the public to just understand, of course, is, as you mentioned there, you allude to, not everything will you be able to share with us. So obviously, one of the things that our viewers might like to find out is the ongoing investigations with regards to the allegations against a certain current government minister. But that's an ongoing investigation. You can't necessarily get into that in a public forum like this. That's correct?
Yeah, it is. So we would leave those things for the commissioner when he have the commissioner's media brief, that he will update the public as the need be, right? But for the media ambassadors, these questions do come to us, and as the most that we can say is that it's an ongoing investigation because we don't want to trample and have contradicting information, and we look like we are contradicting each other in the context of media ambassadors.
Well, I understand that, and I know that, as you said, questions will come to you, and you can always, inform us. Well, we can't respond to that right now. It's an ongoing investigation, as with what we understand, especially when it's before the court. But how now do you respond to members of the public who are under the impression that this is not the TTPS trying to give factual information and bridge the information gap? This is just a public relations campaign on the part of the TTPS.
Well, the TTPS must have a public information campaign, and we must try to get as much information out there. We will have detractors. We will have persons who believe that we are just using public gimmickry, as you say, as they would say. It is not something that the public is familiar with, in that the police is coming towards, is sharing information. This has never been part of the conversation of the TTPS. As you all have experienced, would have known that whenever you have to get information from the police, you would have to go through a particular channel where you have to share information via senior officers, because that is how our standing orders was, in fact, established, that before we share information with the media or any type of media, print or news, print or electronic, we'll have to get permission and have to go to the commissioner. Now, the media ambassador program and our corporate communication unit has moved away from that slightly, in that we are given permission to communicate information that is shared among the media ambassadors, that is sanctioned and authorized by the commissioner to share. So this gives us another opportunity to expand our communication network with all the social media and persons in the media. So yes, we will have persons who will say that we are trying public gimmickry, public relations, but public relations is a key element in any law enforcement.
The irony of the situation is, because we just spoke to the PRO of one of the political parties, and moving to the other party, one of the things that I wish they would do is actually something like what your media ambassador program is. That is to say, we have, at the very least, information that is authorized to be given out to the public. Everybody is briefed it, who is public facing, so that we have one message, and also we have more information going out. And I think it's easy to get caught up in the fact that, yes, the information is just what is authorized, but part of it is that we're getting more information. It's a step in the right direction. It's not something that I would want to discourage. I would want to encourage more entities and bodies, particularly in government, do, and particularly in politics. Now, with that said, though, with regards to the ongoing situation and the stresses of the TTPS, I don't know if my colleague has another general question, but one of the things I do want to ask right now, you know, we've noticed just certain issues. There's only one acting commissioner of police who is the only, as far as I'm understanding, deputy commissioner of police substantive. So there's a big void at the top. You know, there's a lot of public outcry for various things. Maybe this is an attempt to try to get information to counteract the accusations that seem to fly out there on social media, as you pointed out. Do you see that the growing public sentiment of the police, is it really impacting your job? Are the challenges starting to really weigh down on the TTPS?
Well, just to clarify one aspect of it, we do in fact have 3 deputy commissioners of police.
Okay, currently?
Currently we have 3 deputy commissioners of police. Our current commissioner of police has been appointed to act as commissioner of police. So we have all the key areas within the executive of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service filled at this point in time, right? Yes, it is stressful at some times. It is because we also have negatives within each police service on a regular basis. You might see some situation popping up like that always slaps us in the face when we have officers going contrary to our regulations and doing negatives in the public, that we have to actually acknowledge and accept that yes, we have bad apples. Our customer service training is continuously being improved upon. Based on these side of the situation, we realize that we need to do a little more in customer service and bringing other persons up to par in customer service. But it's a work in progress because we'll always have some challenges. We will never. We are not trying to put our heads in the sand. That is why our media ambassador program and our corporate communication department is not about putting your head in the sand. It is about putting our hands up, acknowledging the fact that we have challenges, and finding some methods to mitigate against it in the future and deal with them as they come out.
Well, Inspector Ali, I must thank you for joining us this morning. I know we only had just about 15 minutes, but you know, this was just an introductory conversation. We're glad that you've laid the foundations and precisely why it is the TTPS finds this important. And we also find it very important to have that relationship and build that relationship with the TTPS. I don't know if there's any other comments that you'd like to make before you go, but we look forward next week, definitely from next weekend, to continue the conversations.
No, I just want to say thanks very much for the opportunity. It's another platform that we have, WESN. It's another platform that we have that the media ambassadors can share the information, and you will have a different set of audience that you target, and other than the different areas that you want person listen to. So it's another opportunity for us to share information, to expand our information network in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. So I just want to say thanks very much for this opportunity, and we look forward for another occasion.
Very much so. Well, Acting Superintendent Ashraf Ali, my apologies, I think I may have referred to you as Inspector just now.
That's all
yeah, but
that's not a problem.
Thank you very much, sir. Well, folks, the TTPS is with us here at Talking Point. We're building a relationship, and from next week, Monday, we will continue the conversations. But for now, that is where we pause on the discussion. We're going to take a break, but when we return, we will open up the phone lines this morning where we're asking you the question. Yes, this morning, we're asking you a question. It will be up on your screen. You're free, by the way, to call in and share your opinions on thoughts on other matters. But we're asking you, should Kamla Persad-Bissessar continue in active politics? Remember, the comment is one thing, but today is also nomination day, and she has indicated that she's going up for political leader of the party again. So should Kamla Persad-Bissessar continue in active politics? That's our question this morning. We're going to take a break, and when we return, the phone lines will be open. Stay tuned.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Sight, Thursdays at 11 a.m. only on WESN, Content Capital.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Sight, Thursdays at 11 a.m. only on WESN, Content Capital.
Let your voice be heard. Call Madam Fix It on WESN, the only place that effectively helps you with your woes. Having problems getting onto government agencies, water woes, NIS and pension problems, potholes, and much, much more. Call me, Madam Fix It, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right here on WESN. Let me fix it for you.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing now, Andy.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is it no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Welcome back to the program, and once more you are free to share with us your opinions and your thoughts on absolutely anything that we've discussed this morning or anything that's affecting Trinidad and Tobago. But the question that we are asking you this morning, we'd like your opinion on, is should Kamla Persad-Bissessar continue in active politics? Now, going back to the interview with Dr. Kirk Mayhew, I understand that he's the public relations officer and he's an academic, but very quickly, just to let you know, I think it is rather insulting that he's questioning where is the perception of racism. Furthermore, the contradiction stands in the fact that you are referring to it as a tragedy in our history, yet using it as a justification on the part of Mrs. Persad-Bissessar, but at the same time condemning Camille Robinson Reeves. So does the United National Congress, in all of its might and everything that it's preached us, how could it refer to itself as a national party after such behavior? We have a call on the line with us from Tobago.
Very, very ironic timing there, because they're in, especially a national party, Tobago. What do you think about our question there? Good morning.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, sir. We're doing well. How are you?
I'm very good, very good. Rather was not amused, but intrigued by that rather painful interview of the PRO of the UNC. To answer your question directly, it is my opinion that both Kamla and Dr. Rowley take a back seat and pass the baton to other leaders of their parties who may be able to innovate on what they have attempted to do thus far. I agreed with your and I've said it many times, I'm not sure if I said it on your platform, that one of the remedies could certainly be if an African was propelled to the political leader position of the UNC, someone who, of course, is not just a mouthpiece, and the same with the PNM, where someone from our Indian family propelled to the PNM's position as political leader. And that could help to sort of head off this tide of perceived racism. And I say perceived because racism is not possible between the African and Indian population here in Trinidad and Tobago. Neither one of them holds power over the other to interfere with their living. Africans cannot tell Indians, don't eat in that restaurant, don't drink from that water fountain. They don't have that power. So racism cannot be practiced. In regards to Kamala's comment, while she was out of place for making it, it was not hers to make. It was not a racist comment, and it is a comment that hopefully will contribute to Africans being very serious about a conversation that we have avoided having for a very, 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 very long time. As a matter of fact, we've never had it. And that is why do we continue to wear the brand of those who enslaved our ancestors. All right? So those are my comments this morning.
Well, thank you very much, Caller. Wait. I just have one question, though. Do you think that a mixed-race person would be able to bridge that divide being leader of either party, as opposed to saying that it would have to be Afro-Trinidadian or Indo-Trinidadian for the traditionally opposite side? Could somebody of a dual race or mixed race be that bridge? Do you think that would work?
Yeah, I don't see someone just what you consider mixed race, because when you look at someone with mixed race, they tend to teeter to either side. So if you're black and you're very light skinned, blacks look at you as you're black, you're African. You just happen to be light skinned, you have some Indian in your blood or something like that. And the same vice versa. I think in order to really drive the message to the collective consciousness of the nation, it has to be very succinct and very distinctive in its qualities. So an African that looks African, an Indian that looks Indian, I think will have that sort of appeal to the collective consciousness of the nation, and be able to then begin to sway how we interact with each other on the matter of our culture. Culture should not be disrupted. There should be an African culture. There should be an Indian culture. You should not have to dilute or get rid of your culture just to accommodate another. Both cultures can exist.
Thank you very much, caller.
Thank you, caller.
We went a little bit overboard with time there, but that's okay. Interesting point from the caller. The question is up on your screen. Should Kamala Persad-Bissessek continue in active politics? And from my perspective, two things I want to say before we get more callers. One, first of all, this conversation is very sad. That we have to have a conversation about Indo-Trinidadian and Afro-Trinidadian. It is rather sad that in this day and age we're still having a conversation.
Unfortunately, it's come up, and I think my philosophy is always what Morgan Freeman said years ago. It's only going to end when we are able to stop talking about it. When the distinctions, yes, be proud of your ancestry, but the differences should not be so important to us that we hold on to what makes us different.
Before we go to our call on the line, why are we still celebrating 2010? Why is it on May 24th we celebrated 12 years since Kamala was elected as Prime Minister of the nation? No, the point I'm trying to make is, after this conversation that we've had, how is it that the UNC will refer to themselves as a national party? I mean, under the leadership of Kamala Persad-Bissessek, could the United National Congress be seen or perceived to be a viable, strong second option? And could she be seen as a Prime Minister for all of Trinidad and Tobago? We have a caller on the line with us from San Fernando. Good morning, caller.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
You know, this thing is not going to end. Let me tell you why it is end. Because You see, it matters whether it is an Indian Prime Minister, an African Prime Minister, any Prime Minister, or a Douglas Prime Minister. I think that is the issue. It's a Prime Minister, Canadian, that once it doesn't matter whether it is the color of a person's skin. Another thing is culture. You have your culture, I have my culture. But there's a sort of consciousness of inferiority to other people's cultures by each other. And those things are what is causing the situation to be as it is. Now I don't want to take any biased position. I want to say it off the bat. I support the People's National Movement. But I am also not pleased with a lot that might have been done. But when I listen to, like, there's not enough Indians to accept the Caribbean Court of Justice. When I listen, like, there's not enough Indians in the police service, and prominent people making these these comments, and the opposition leader calling the Prime Minister an Oreo, these statements goes real far. Now, I'm not saying because the gentleman, when he spoke about the Calcutta ship, that was also not a good statement to make.
Yes.
But it is very pronounced with Ms. Kamala Business and with these statements all in Parliament, all over the place. They keep making these statements. Now, gentlemen, I want to say pleasant good morning to you, and I admire how well you run all your program. I think all you, this is a balanced program, you know. I listened only for a while, and this is a balanced program. Only keep it up. Thank you,
sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much.
There's one statement he made there that I just want to touch on. Not enough Indians in the police service. And I've seen this in other situations across the globe. We can't just assume that because it's not, the numbers are not the same as the population ratio, that something is wrong. We do have to ask, is it just that not as many Indian men and women want to be in the police service? Why is that? Is it something that we're doing wrong? Is it just a preference? Like, we need to be able to answer those things before we could say, well, obviously there's something wrong here.
I have a lot more to comment on, but I want to give the caller from St. Anne's an opportunity.
And the members.
Good morning.
Hi.
And comment to the name of what Kamala said about your ancestors and African name. Remember when the slave master bought the slaves, they all changed their name. The example for Kunta Kinte.
Yes.
When they caught Kunta Kinte, the white man asked him, what is his name? He said, Kunta Kinte. They beat him, almost kill him. And he said, if you don't say Toby, it's Licks. So the slave master changed up the name from Toby to Kunta Kinte
to Toby, yeah.
Toby. So what Kamala has done, she has educated a lot of people who didn't know that that the name came from Africa, right? And it was taken away from them by the Englishman or even by the Americans. So she did right what she said. She educated a lot of people.
Okay.
Thank you very much, and you have a beautiful day.
Thank you very much for you too. I cannot fault anybody for expressing the opinion that Kamala educated individuals and Dr. Kirkmew educated a lot of individuals. However, I must apologize for saying that it's absolute nonsense, and I disagree. Not necessarily with you, caller, but I cannot help the fact that think to ourselves that we refer to this as a tragedy. We refer to this as a tragedy. This is a stain in our history. And by the way, history will also tell you that slavery started within Africa before the cross-Atlantic slave trade as well.
Yep. I mean, slavery existed well before the transatlantic slave trade on every continent.
Exactly.
And traditionally, slavery was internal.
So
I enslaved my fellow, whichever country, race, kingdom, population, whatever.
Don't look at me and tell me it's a tragedy to stain, then use it as a justification for the opposition leader. But you condemn Camille Robinson Orjiz. I'm not saying what Camille Robinson Orjiz did was right by any means. I'm simply saying you can't be a contradiction at the same time, because in that interview, I said Kamala Sushila Prasad Bisa said twice, at least twice. How come nobody condemned me? for stating it
I think the
or
key
making
is
fun of it.
The PRO this morning and how he made the statements, you could argue was a bit different, maybe a lot different, to how the opposition leader made the statements on Thursday. We have Tunapuna on the line. Good morning.
Hello, good morning, caller.
Morning.
Hello, good morning.
You're live. Morning.
Yeah, calling from Tunapuna.
Yes.
Yeah, this question about national parties. What is this question about? Question about why it is a party is called a national party? Well, let me put it forward to you all.
Okay.
Ever since in Trinidad and Tobago, the Tobago aspect of the politics is PNM and DAC or PNM and whatever party they. No other party from Trinidad except the PNM was ever involved in the politics of Tobago. In other words, UNC at this point in time knows that the politics in Tobago is about PNM and their opposition there. They have a history of that from A.N.R. Robinson comes down. So why it is politically stupid and go as a party from Trinidad with majority, the majority, so to speak, like the PNM majority is African, the majority of UNC are Indian. Why play politically stupid and go and enter in that to make it easier for the PNM to run away? So this thing about national party, I think we should throw that the window when coming to Tobago aspect of it. Okay?
Well, caller.
Use the example of the PDP for me.
No,
go ahead, Sean.
No, but we do have the question, which we have slightly neglected on this segment. Do you think Kamala Persad-Bissessar should remain active in politics?
Well, they have a party and they have a constitution, and that is their responsibility and their business. Not Tom, Dick, Harry, and Henry from all over the place. To interfere with the People's Party.
Thank you very much, caller.
Thanks, caller.
It is Tom, Dick, and Harry Lal's business when it comes to general election. So,
therein lies Europe, right? Because we complain about the people on the slates.
Exactly.
If we're not involved selecting the slates, that's the catch. That's the catch-22 caller, unfortunately.
So simply enough, Kamala Persad-Bissessar has lost 2 general elections. And you're right. The United National Congress has a constitution. It doesn't limit the number of terms that one can hold for the role of political leader. It is a democratic party, at least that is what we are told. However, at the end of it all, what is the right thing to do?
How many times has a political leader been successfully challenged? I mean, not very often. Think about it, not very often. Now, we haven't had a long history.
But then,
a long enough history.
That goes back to another aspect of this entire conversation. That are we accepting the hypocrisy? Are members within one's political party accepting the hypocrisy?
So, we had 2 contrasting views from 2 callers earlier today. One pointed out the fact that this needs to stop being an issue. You know, like racism is not going to be an issue, or racial tension is not going to be an issue. If we keep bringing it up and we keep debating the differences and it keeps being a point of contention, we have to not just stop, we have to stop talking about it. It has to be the norm. The problem is, could we get to the norm without a transition? And I think arguably that might be what the caller from Tobago was speaking about. To have to transition to the ideal, we do have to kind of, I guess you could say, expose people to something different before they will accept it as norm and usual.
We have about 1 minute and 30 seconds left for the call, so this is the caller from Tobago, final caller for the morning. Good morning, caller.
Hello.
Hi, good morning.
Hi, morning.
Hello, I don't know if I'm the one you're listening to, am I?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, but I see the conversation still going. Nevertheless, I didn't have the opportunity to say this before, but in terms of leadership or example, I am disappointed with the example that the leadership in these parties are giving to our country.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that our country would progress much under this kind of leadership where we have this very bad example.
Mm-hmm.
Camille Robinson and Bisesa were wrong.
Yeah.
But Camille is the one who started the thing. And I think what we need is a rest from this kind of leadership for the progress of our country.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, caller.
Thank you, caller.
Now, caller, you are absolutely right from the perspective that this would you could make the opinion here that it is Camille Robinson or Reece that started it. Others may have a different opinion. By the way, that's it for calls, so thank you very much. However, Kamala should not have been the one to continue it. As my co-host pointed out, you should have condemned it and left it just as that. Right? You should not have continued it. Because not only now have you gone and you've created a distraction when you could have gone to the jugular of the People's National Movement government with the issues surrounding Minister Foster Cummings, with the issues surrounding PARA, with the Port of Spain General Hospital Central Block, with the Education Facilities Company Limited, with the Heritage and Stabilization Fund, with our LNG train lines, with the Police Service Commission. There's so many things that you could have said and done that would have been a lot more effective, would have created more political opinions, but at the same time more conversations among citizens, rather than this petty, stupid, and nasty attitude and behavior that we seem to keep falling into that trap. But that's the reason why we'll have these discussions. So you're right, political leadership on both sides.
Yes.
But Kamala Persad-Bissessar should not have continued it.
I think it's important to point out, and the first caller, he answered the question on both sides. He said both political leaders, he think they should go. I think it's important to say, it's not that the question isn't applicable to various members in politics, not just in the opposition leader, but also in the PNM, the Prime Minister himself on down. I will just say this. I think the two parties are in different positions. There are people who concern me with regards to their ambitions and regards to the allegations against them. And I do wonder if, unfortunately, the PNM and the slate that they have, that might come after Keith Rowley would be less than an upgrade. It would be very counter to that. And that's unfortunate because I do think, yes, Dr. Keith Rowley has been in politics for a while and he is not a young man. And by all regards, he should probably retire. We see what's going on with Joe Biden right now. I don't even know if it's healthy for him to continue in the job, to be honest. But with that said, there are some people there that I very much have doubts with regards to the PNM. With the UNC, there are young people who I really would like to see be given a chance now before they get corrupted with the business as usual as politics.
Dr. Keith Rowley has indicated that he will go for leadership of the People's National Movement again simply because he was elected as Prime Minister. He will see out his term. In 2025, we will see whether or not he is running again for the post of Prime Minister. Last election, he's indicated otherwise. I understand his reasoning. In my opinion, I do not think there's any justification or reasoning for Kamala Persad-Bissessar to continue as political leader of the United National Congress. Now, there is a democratic system and people vote for who they want to. But at the end of the day, at the end of it all, I think what we need to understand, and I think what we need to realize and see, my friend, is simple this. Kamala Persad-Bissessar, from what we've seen, has not brought the United National Congress to being a strong opposition. She's weakened the party, she's weakened the opposition. And furthermore, I think that what she has done with the United National Congress, though we have all the faults of the People's National Movement are associated with the PNM, her being there probably strengthens the PNM's chances in an election or in government.
I was leaning to the point where, because you've said that before, but given how government has been acting the last few months, I was saying, well, maybe that's no longer the case. Then this happened. Now I'm not so sure. Now, to me, everything is up in the air again. I'll just say this. I think with the PNM, unfortunately, we have flaws in our democracy. We would need more than just Dr. Keith Rowley to retire and to move on. Some of them old stalwarts, some of them young people new to the party.
Well, very finally, folks, as we wrap things up, thank you very much. But it's happening on both ends. We have no leadership, and very simply, who's going to end it? It has to be the future. It has to be the youth. It has to be you.
Race to the bottom, people.
Exactly.
We need to stop the race to the bottom.
At the end of it all, if we see a continuation of the chaos, or one political leader continuing the chaos, they're not a leader, in my opinion. But thank you very much to everyone for joining us this morning, to all our callers, and hopefully we'll see you again tomorrow morning. Remember, today's a good day to have a good day. Bye-bye.